Hi and welcome to my artist talk in conversation with Cassie Thring at Floating Goose Studios for the Adelaide Fringe Festival. It's nice and informal, so feel free to pop it on behind whatever you're up to today. This one was for my solo exhibition, The Difference Between Things. Check out my exhibition tour if you haven't seen it already. I'm really excited to share this with you, so let's get started.
Hello everybody. My name's Cassie Thring, and on behalf of all of the Floating Goose members, I want to welcome you here tonight. Of course, we're here to talk with Ruby about this amazing show. So before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that it's such a privilege to be meeting here tonight on gun land, and want to acknowledge all elders, past, present and future, and also remember that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So, Ruby, welcome. Welcome to the booth.
Thank you.
Although you have been here for a little while. The exhibition tonight is called The Difference Between Things, a solo show, fringe show for Ruby, and I don't know who of you is familiar with Ruby's practice, but it's quite a big departure from her practice up until now. In this exhibition, I'll just read this bit of an intro. Ruby presents a new body of artwork which is radically different from the figurative realist work that she's been making over the last 10 years. This work she's employing an intuitive, sort of multi-layered, process-based methods to which Ruby, I think, is hoping to open some kind of conversation between the viewer and the work, and distance ourselves a bit from the more prescribed narrative of that sort of figurative work that you've been making in the past and the historical weight that brings. This conceptual shift is the beginning of a profound and exciting direction for your practice. Within the show, your pursuit of containing the difference between major concerns like ambiguous space between realism and abstraction, and the difference between the picture plane and the object nature of painting. So welcome.
Thank you.
Firstly, let's just hear a bit about your artistic journey. How did you begin your career as an artist?
So I always knew I wanted to be an artist, and when I went to high school, I applied for a scholarship to Adelaide School of Art, and I was fortunate enough to get that, and that basically kicked things off for me, because from that point, from first year, I started exhibiting. So making and exhibiting, and from there I did my honours degree in visual art, majoring in realistic painting, and then was lucky enough to be accepted into the Helpman Academy graduate exhibition, which is like a big exhibition of people's work when they graduate art school, and I won a few awards from there, and that was really awesome. So one award funded my first solo exhibition, and the other was the travel prize, which was funding to basically go and have an amazing time overseas, go and look at artworks in galleries all around the world, and I guess, gather fresh inspiration. So that really kicked things off for my career, and from there I also was fortunate enough to receive the Ruth Tuck Scholarship a few years after that, which allowed me to live in London and study at Central St Martin's, and also at the Florence Academy in Florence. So it's been a really amazing.
So how long was the Ruth Tuck?
So that was a scholarship, so it was just about $12,500 towards what I had proposed, which was study in London and in Florence. And I stayed there for a lot longer than that though. I was there for about 4 years. I really enjoyed my time there, and got to see some amazing exhibitions. It was just such a cultural hub to see so many awesome artworks, and it was super inspiring.
How amazing. I just wanted to say before, we have some Q&A at the end, but if you if you want to ask anything as we go along, just sing out and put your hand up or whatever. So it's going to be really relaxed and
yeah, definitely. Very informal.
Yeah, just not sort of us and them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I was just going to say with that kind of scholarship and the travels, that's a travel scholarship, and I know that Patrick Cassar, who is a Goose member, has just won that with his honours work back at AXA this year.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Just saying how wonderful those opportunities are to just set you off on and give you the means to get places and see things and really be inspired, and who knows what direction you would have gone in otherwise. And so how important those opportunities are.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and even though you can't be perhaps travelling overseas for a while, there's plenty to see around Australia in different galleries, to get that those creative juices flowing.
Yeah, definitely.
I know that the title of the show, The Difference Between Things, is drawn from a Matisse quote where he says he doesn't paint things, he paints the difference between things.
Yeah.
So why did that resonate with you? Why did you choose that for the title of the show?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge Matisse fan. I'm sure everybody knows Matisse. And his work really inspired me, and I was just reading about him, and that quote just resonated with me because to me it's really about relationships between things, and I've always been drawn to, I guess, these duo contrasting relationships. So first off, the idea that a painting can be a window into another world, essentially through like realism, but also the fact that it's a physical object that can be touched, held, and hung on the wall. I really love that duality. So yeah, I guess the quote just spoke to me, and looking at his work, I really wanted to honour that as I guess a little bit of the fire that started the journey for me of making this new body of work. And I think it's pretty obvious that this is quite a departure for those of you that do know my old stuff. And just really focusing on the formal properties of art, so shape, tone, texture, line, all of those things, and the relationships within that. There's just so much stuff to explore just within that, the confines of formalism, I think. So yeah, I think it was just important to me to kind of tip my hat to Matisse.
Well, I feel like you can really see it in the work, but when you're talking about the formal qualities, do you think that that's why you chose such a limited palette?
Absolutely.
As in black, red, white, and a few, shades of or tonal shifts with the Perspex or acrylic?
Yeah, I think that was an effective way to pull all the work together, because I think if you look at all the work individually, or at least some of it can look quite different. So there's woodworks, and then there's works that are odd canvas shapes with Perspex and rope, then there's the kind of inky watercolour with a bit of realism. They're all trying to, I guess, answer the same question, in that they're all thinking about pictorial space and the way that we view things in layers and what challenges our perception and that kind of stuff. And I think it's a powerful tool to have a consistent colour scheme or some motifs like the stripy pattern that runs through things to tie everything together so it feels unified. Otherwise, if it was, I think there's a lot already going on here, like texturally, shape-wise, all of that I think having multiple colour schemes running through the work as a body of work would be quite, like, maybe a little bit too much. So that decision I made really early on, and it was a good foundation to restrict myself and then bounce off of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I wonder whether, with these works, when you're talking about layers and sort of that push-pull with your figurative realist paintings, of course, all those things are in there, but you can't see it because what you see is a figure, or it gets perhaps hidden under because you think you know what you're seeing. So was that one sort of reason or decision for getting rid of the figure? I know that there's still, you've sort of eased us, helped us into this room through those few eyes. But Was that one reason that you went to abstract? Because there's hints of it in earlier work anyway, and that sort of flat plane and then pattern and things. But this is very obviously more of an object and more of multiple plans.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of motifs actually run through my figurative work as well. So for those of you that have seen it, I always use a lot of stripes in that previous work too. And it is almost just like removing a figure in a way. But really, the work actually started kind of figuratively in a way. Some of the shapes you might recognise as hands or parts of fingers or that kind of thing. So it did almost start figuratively. I couldn't completely remove the figure. But I think you're right. Sometimes when I find when I view realistic work, I can't not get over just what it is. I'm just analysing what it is, and once I've kind of locked into that, I'm almost ready to move on. And that really, I guess, was a catalyst for change for me. Yeah. So I wanted to hold the viewer's gaze for a longer amount of time and allow them to have freedom in analysis, I guess. What's been amazing about this work is that people have come to it, and I've encouraged them to do so, to look at it and question what it is or what it makes them think of, almost like a Rorschach test. So sometimes people will be like, oh, that looks like a mountain, or that looks like a figure. So many people said this painting here actually to them was a figure in a field, or the work over there was a mountain. So that's been really interesting as well.
Do you find that you get more of that interaction with these works than people marvelling at, I don't know, how beautifully your ear looks like an ear in one of the figurative works from the past? You find that this is both scary and liberating to paint like this?
Yes, definitely.
Or work like this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really painting in the expanded field, isn't it?
Yeah, and I always feel it is a little bit uncomfortable to paint in this way, because realism has been my focus for like 10 years. Gosh, I can't believe that. Long time. And so it is really liberating, but it's also challenging, and it's stimulating and engaging for me as a maker in such a different way, because basically when I was painting realistically, I would formulate my concept, I would create my image, and there wouldn't be a lot of play in between deciding on the composition and taking reference photos to actually making it, whereas this is completely playful and intuitive every step of the way. And it's it's full on, because you're constantly questioning.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that, I mean, speaking personally, that's how I also work, and it's exciting and also frightening, because you don't know if it's going to work or not until you get to the end.
Yes.
But of course, that's where the richness lies too, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of paintings, so this one and the one just in the corner, that were very process driven. I basically had these canvases stapled to my studio wall for some time, and I was just applying paint on them layer upon layer until I got a sense of what they were. So I let the composition come to me, and they were there for a long time, like months and months, and it wasn't until almost like the week before hanging that I found resolve for them.
So that's so wonderful to hear.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like this one, for example, felt so static, and I just felt like I couldn't resolve it. So what I did was I actually took it outside my studio and I got aerosol and I just sprayed it, because I felt like in order to make a move, I had to do something. Even if it didn't work, it would give me a reason to make change.
Yeah,
so,
like shake it up.
Yeah, so I think that's really powerful sometimes, if it's too static, just to do anything, because even if the thing you do you don't like, at least you can change it from there. You have a foundation to push.
Just keep moving. Like Bear Grylls always says, just keep moving. Don't stay still. I wonder, as a DJ, because I don't know if you all know that Ruby's a really successful and wonderful DJ as well. As Meg, has got so many different hats. Do you listen to a lot of music while you work?
Yeah, I do. But I must admit, what I listen to in the studio is totally different to what I play as a DJ. So I like to listen to stuff that has a dreamlike quality. So Leonard Cohen, Nick Cave, a lot of classical. Yeah, just
really?
very different, which is stuff obviously that I would never play because I don't think a dance floor really wants to hear that necessarily. Yeah, stuff that can, I like stuff that feels timeless so that it puts you in a place where you don't know what time it is, you can just keep going and you're kind of floating along.
Because, I would describe these works as very dynamic and full of energy. Maybe classical, these kind of movements through with the rope and those linear qualities.
Well, I must admit, there's definitely times that I put some heavy metal on if I need a push, some Slayer or something. But most of the time, it's the kind of dreamy stuff. Yeah.
So, see this work behind us, the large work on that wall.
Yes.
Can you just talk about the process and how that came?
Yeah, that's actually my favourite work in the whole show, to be honest. So this was such a learning curve for me, all of these works, because I had to learn how to make and stretch odd-shaped canvases. So I worked with a friend who is an amazing woodworker, and he helped me build the frames. And that was quite a process because we had to learn how to put stretch bars into odd canvas shapes, how to basically make them structurally sound, all of these things. And then he left. And then I
sit flat against the wall.
Yes, exactly, sit flat against the wall. And then I had to learn how to stretch canvas to odd shapes. So in art school we're taught how to stretch canvas to 90-degree angles. From go. But when it comes to like a pointed shape, oh my gosh, it was quite an experience. I had to re-stretch a lot of these a few times to get it just right. There's no guide yet on the internet. Maybe I should do a little YouTube video.
Well, I have been looking very closely at the corners and they're just...
I don't know. Well, yeah, I'm happy with how they've worked out. But I also worked with an amazing laser cutter. So a friend of mine who's a laser cutter who... This is actually the first time that I've worked with... I've outsourced skill. So, I don't know, I think my views have changed. I think I was more traditional when I painted realistically, that I wanted everything to be done by my hand. And now I can see that for me that's quite limiting, and I don't think there's any shame to actually outsource things. So I worked with a laser cutter who took my drawings from my sketchbooks and assisted me in putting them into a program that analysed their scale and angles and neaten them up and all that kind of stuff, because it's not just a Photoshop or an InDesign, it's like a particular program. And he helped me cut the panels and transport them and pick the colours, and so that was quite an experience. And actually I had to learn how to hang the work as well, because I'd never drilled into a ceiling, so they're hanging from dynabolts, which is another thing I learnt about. And I just have to give a shout out to Jamie from the Goose, who helped me so much with that, installing the works. So that took quite a while.
I noticed these bolts up here, they're quite overt.
Yeah, so I think, what's that old saying, if something is going to happen, if something possibly bad can happen, it will, or I don't know what it is. I just didn't even consider the fact that that it was under an air conditioner. So I had to resolve that quite quickly, work out how that was going to happen. I think in my mind though, I had many resolutions for the problem of hanging the work. I had tried some like wooden structures coming off of the wall, but I think the bolts coming out from this work actually I find they don't catch my eye. I don't find them displeasing or attention pulling from the work. So yeah,
no, not at all. With the coloured Perspex components, did you have a fixed idea of where they would sit on front of your painted canvas when they were made? And is that where they stayed, or or were you then moving them around to see sort of compositionally where you thought that they would be the best fit?
Well, I did have an idea. Most of them are exactly where I wanted them to be, but again, when we were drilling the dynabolts into the ceiling, just randomly we would hit like a metal pole or something and we'd have to adjust. But the beauty of those, I think I'm going to call them mobile paintings, because they have a sense of that, mobile, is that they are like a collage, and I love collage play, so all the sketchbooks are really like the start of thinking about collage and layering and that kind of thing. And I think they speak of that really well, because you can move the pieces and it still has, it still achieves the same goal. I think definitely there's compositions that are more successful than others, but I was only thinking this today, like if I, for the ones that are not sold, I could take them to the studio and just literally move the pieces around and create a brand new work, which is quite lovely.
Will you assist in the hang of those that have sold?
Yes.
Yes. With the, I'm just trying to think what the visual disturbances.
Yes.
That are these timber cutouts around.
It's the cutouts around the walls and also the wooden works. So there's one just behind you.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Very sort of Matisse inspired, I would imagine. I'm interested to know whether the spaces between, or are they the positive or the negative shapes?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. So the cutout shapes, which are just the ones lying around, yes, I think they really do speak of collage and like the foundation of where the concept came from, really. And it's so funny. I think feedback is so important to an artist, and I was lucky enough to have Adele Sluices from the Mill come and look at my work, and I had these pieces around. I literally had them like against my studio wall with rope and things hanging on them, just like not even thought about. And this is like classic art school. I feel like everyone has a story like this. She went over and she was like, "Wow, that is amazing, that piece against the wall." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm just storing it there." But then, that encouragement actually made me realise that they're really powerful.
Yeah.
And it was a nice consideration for the front of the gallery, which obviously just has windows, to have some leaning pieces.
I think they really activate the space and work really well with the wall work. Yeah.
Because this show, for me, I haven't had a solo show for some time, and obviously this is a new direction as well, so I really wanted to have a really powerful and engaging exhibition, and so that's why there's so much work. There's a lot of work, and if I were to do it again, I would consider maybe removing a couple of the pieces to give a bit more space to breathe for some of the bigger works, although I still think it's successfully hung. But I just feel like so much has gone into this show, and I'm just so excited to continue.
Speaking of continue, what have you got planned next? What's going to happen to your art practice once this show is done?
Well, I have a show in April, which is really exciting, at the Mill. So that is a duo exhibition with a performance artist called Ida Sophia, and the concept behind that show is basically that we will be entering the space when it opens and we won't have any work, and the show will really be about us occupying the space during the exhibition time and making during that time. And we've written a manifesto together. Our practices are very different, so she's obviously a performance artist and I'm a painter, and we are going to, the objective is to try and see each other's or our own practices through the eyes of the other, so to challenge each other. We're going to be giving each other little tasks throughout the exhibition period to consider. So,
and what dates, how long will that run for?
It goes for a month. The dates I'll have to get back to you because I can't remember them at this moment. But it's very exciting, and I love the idea of observation and engagement from the audience and that kind of thing. And then basically the closing night, which will be a week before the show actually closes, will be the presentation night where we show the works that we've made during that time. We also will
fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great.
And I've also just found out today that I've received the Art Pod residency, which is really exciting. So that's happening later in the year, where I will be occupying the space of Art Pod on Morphett Street for, I think it's 4 months. Yeah, so that's going to be really exciting as well. And that's revolving around a project which will be continuing this work. So some of the works that aren't sold will go to Art Pod straight away and occupy the space. And then it'll be a lot about feedback and engagement with the audience. So the people that walk past the space daily, and it will involve some workshops as well, free workshops to get people engaged, and then collaborative artwork. So it's quite, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's 4 months is a long time. I feel really excited to do that project.
Oh, it's so great to have those opportunities after the success of this, to be able to keep that momentum and keep going, especially when you've got all your DJ work, and I'm assuming that you'll be heavily involved in pom-pom moving forward as well.
Yeah. So just for those that don't know, pom-pom's a kids' art space. So I also am a facilitator and teacher, so do a lot of that as well as part of my arts practice, as does many of the geese here.
Yeah, it's a wonderful program.
Yeah.
Well, before we ask for any questions and get some other conversations happening, I just want to say thank you so much for giving us your time tonight and for making this beautiful body of work. It's just sort of oozes your confidence and mastery of paint, and it's just a thrill to see that you've shown us, or you had the goose as your space to break away from having such a major change in your
thank you.
So thank you so much.
Bottle of wine to say thank you to you.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so now we've got some time if anybody wants to have a chat to Ruby and ask some questions.
Yes.
Ruby, so could you tell me how you transitioned into this new space? Was this like a period that you went through, or was there a defining moment for you that really pushed you into this new style?
That's a great question, Pauline. Thank you. I actually had a show booked for November of last year here, and it was a realistic, figurative painting show. So I had already started work for that. I think some people might have seen some of the work, and when I don't want to sound like lame or anything, but COVID actually really affected me, and I'm sure many others. And when we went into that first lockdown, I decided to experiment and just put that work on pause and just have some fun and play at home. So just go back to basics like collage, colour, texture in the sketchbooks, which is why it's like really important to me that I showed these books, even though they're not completely polished or perfect. I just really wanted to show that starting point, and it just really kind of like lit something inside me, made me really excited, and just brought this like fire for making. And I was just getting up every day and just making, and basically approached the goose and was like, guys, what do you think of this new direction? And they were like, yes. So they were so supportive, and I think that was the catalyst, really. Yeah. And also, I also have to say, it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, was the idea of, as artists, I think part of our job is to, engage with the viewers, whether you make work that is formalist in nature or political or whatever your message is. It's really about engagement. And I was just questioning whether or how my portraits and figurative work engage with viewers, and how I could do that better. And I think, it was a period of like analysis and questioning my practice and how I wanted to move forward, and like how and why is really important. Yeah. So
I feel like that's such a great description of COVID too, because everyone sort of endured that time, and I think of all the things that came out of it, connection was the thing that people craved the most.
Yeah.
And so that's so interesting that it made you sort of turn into a different area to foster that more.
yeah, definitely.
Where do you think you'll see yourself this time next year? Considering you've got a big year ahead of you.
Well, I must admit I haven't thought that far ahead. But I think, again, COVID inspired, like, I just really wanted to hit the ground running with this. I just said to myself, like, after, we've been so fortunate. There are still places in the world that are so hit hard by COVID. People can't leave their homes, and, we're having an arts festival right now. It's amazing. So I just said to myself this year, I just want to apply for everything. If I think it's relevant to me and I think that I can contribute and all of that, I'm going to go for it, which is why I've got these 2 things coming up, which is amazing. So probably next year, I imagine, might be some time, like, even though I will be making throughout this whole period, maybe it will be just solid studio time. Because I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot over the next however months. So I think there'll be a lot of time to reflect and to make based on what happens this year. Yeah.
Are you considering introducing another colour?
Oh, that's a good
And if you do, would one have to go? Would it be like one in, one out?
I don't know. Well,
or maybe the public, maybe while you're at Art Pub, there'll be
some suggestions? Or
maybe the public will bring other colours if they're allowed.
If they're allowed. Well, I know that it seems really restricted, but this is actually me branching out a bit.
No, I think it's amazing. I think it really works well, and I agree. I think it would be too much if you didn't keep those some kind of boundaries.
I think instead of the idea of introducing another colour, I think would be more about playing with colour relationships. Because something that I was really interested in with my old work in the portraiture was I was using stripes in the portraits that had, they were very bright colours, but they had the same tone. So when there's 2 strips of colour next to one another that are tonally the same, but different colours, let's say a green and an orange, they have a vibration optically, so your eye actually, it almost hurts a little bit to look at them. And I really liked that. So I wouldn't mind, I would like to think more about colour relationships perhaps in the future.
It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Ruby, is there a piece that you felt that you didn't want to show or wanted to keep for yourself, or were a bit nervous about putting out in front of people?
Yeah,
that's one of those.
Yeah, that's a good question. What's so funny with exhibitions is when you show stuff that you're not completely happy with, it's always the first thing that sells. So this journey, as I said, started like a year ago, so it's taken me about a year to make everything. But some of the older pieces, which are these ones here, I did question whether to put them in at all, because I wasn't sure if they were successful, and of course they were the first thing that sold, not individually but as a set, which is also uncommon. So I think those ones, and the more I think about it, this has been an awesome show to share my process. That was one thing that I said about this body of work, was that I wanted to be really vulnerable and show things that weren't completely polished or finished. And I think moving forward I would now not feel like the need to do that. So for example, the sketchbooks, I think they're exciting as they are, but they don't have the same resolve as a work like this, for example. So perhaps next time I would just remove those and not need to show that process. Because I actually saw my mentor recently, Rod Taylor, who's the founder of Essentials, who is awesome, very fortunate to have his Canva. And he said to me, you don't need to validate your process through showing these books. It's good, the validation comes in the work itself being successful, so you don't need to do that. And I think that's a really valid point.
I mean, it's very generous though for us to experience and understand that process.
Yeah.
I also think it's powerful for you to be able to show that process, what it's been like, because at the same time you're shifting into something new.
Yeah.
So
true.
Fabulous.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, it was interesting through the exhibition to see the works that sold quickly.
Yeah.
And I guess as an artist, it's always, is there a balance between commerciality and your artistic direction and drive? That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that I was so fond of I've always been a great fan of your tonal realist portraiture, as you know. And I really felt the eyes, which was a combination, I guess, of some abstract plus tonal. Do you see that combination moving forward in your work, or do you feel you want to go more to the absolute abstract?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm going to see what happens. I think it's going to be a process of just playing, learning, and seeing what comes. Yeah, the eyes sold, like they've all sold. And I think that it was important for this show because it's a really nice tie to the old work, so it makes sense. But in future, I don't know if they will come back or not. But selfishly, I really love making them, so I don't know if that weighs into things. And that's a really hard question for an artist to answer. And I think it's really unique to each person about the balance between making work that's meaningful to you and your concept versus considering the commercial, sales perspective. The answer is I don't know, but we will see.
How do you judge the success of an exhibition?
Yeah,
and that's another interesting question.
That is, and I don't know how to answer that, to be honest, but I think it's different for each artist. Yeah.
I agree.
Cool. Thank you very much for everyone that came today.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. And please come back to the Goose anytime. We have a show every month, and we would love to see you anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching my artist talk. I really hope you enjoyed it. As I mentioned, I've got a Joy exhibition coming up at the Mill in April, so I'll leave a link below for that. I hope you can make it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in my next video. This is Ruby Chu signing out.